And the final question that this model answers is how the world works. So this is all of your values and your beliefs and the things that you hold to be true about how the world works. And there's a lot going on at the moment. You know, when we try and look outwards at the moment, there's a hell of a lot going on. There's a really good book that really changed how I thought about this. And the book's called The Watchman's Rattle by Rebecca Costa. And one of the things she said is when it all gets very complicated out there, which I think we could all agree that it's fairly complex out, or we're living with high degrees of the unknown at the moment because none of us really know what plays out next. The human brain does a quite interesting thing. When it's faced with complexity, we reach a point at which we've got a threshold, a cognitive threshold. We can't figure it out anymore. And what do you think the human brain does when it reaches that threshold? It defaults back to our most basic beliefs. And it tries to explain complexity just by the simple commonest denominator that we think is true. Now, you have all seen this playing out in this country over the last 4 or 5 years with Brexit, and we're now seeing it with the pandemic. We're seeing people, in the absence of really being able to get a grip of really understanding what's happening here, they default back to what they think is right or wrong. So you're seeing various theories emerging around the pandemic and about whether it's good to take a vaccine or not. None of those theories are based on in any way a thorough analysis of the situation because it's too complex for any one person to do. So what we do is we just grasp the belief that we think fits us best and we go with that. And then we dismiss anything outside of that as kind of fake news or, you know, the mainstream media, whatever way round. And I'm not coming down on a side in all of this.
So Dave, The Watchman's Rattle, what's the premise of that book?
That's a good question. So The Watchman's Rattle is back in the old days, in the medieval days, when we had little towns and villages. There used to be a night watchman, and his job was to patrol the village and make sure everything was safe. And he carried a rattle. So if there was a problem, he'd rattle, and that would alert everyone to wake up. And so the premise of the book is that we're facing, as a species, the rattle's been going for an awful long time and we're not responding to it in a way that is going to move us forward, whether you're talking about climate change, pandemics. Interestingly, the book was written long before the pandemic, but there's a whole section where she talks about the potential threat of a pandemic is one of those things that is, scientists are trying to understand. So the premise of the book is, why do we not respond in the face of that type of complexity? All of this is pollution in the system for you. And at some level, part of my job is to challenge and press at the edges of what you think these things are for you and whether that's true or not, and whether by shifting your thinking or your perspective a little bit, you might see something different and something more interesting. You kind of think, well, what the hell's this got to do with business? It's got everything, absolutely everything to do with business, because this affects every decision you take. It affects how you look at your company, how you look at what's going on around you, how you engage with other people. Everything goes through mediation by this thing, this model, if you like.